My job is just not screwing up his job in the cellar, because you can't make great cider without great fruit.
Hello, my name is Ria Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. Hip, hip, hooray! That was Matt Vodraska bringing us into this year episode number 392, talking about the fact that you need good fruit, in this case apples, to make great cider. And he was really giving a tip of the glass to his brother Chris, who is the orchardist and manages also the vineyard at Bent Ladder Cider and Wine. And that's based in Doylestown, Ohio. And we are going to have both Matt and Chris on this week's episode. It's very exciting for me because they have been supporting the podcast via the Cider Going Up campaign, which is wonderful. And I didn't know a lot about their cider, and I learned some amazing tidbits that are going to, I think, blow everyone's mind. Frankly, it blew mine, and my wheels are still turning around it, which is, I'll give you the short piece, but I just want to tell you a little bit more about the Vodraska family. See, it really started with their dad, Dale Vodraska. He grew up growing apples and had an orchard, and then he retired, and that wasn't really sitting well for him, and he had been eyeing some property for a long time called Rittman Orchards. And that eyeing of that property started back in 1995, and I guess, as I think it was Matt who put it, he kind of wore down the folks and was able to get the property in 2004. And we're talking like 30 to 40 acres of apples that they have been planting and dealing with, and, getting to a place where they're getting a higher production rate, right? Getting more apples. But that's just one piece of the story. That's super cool because it allows them to make wonderful heirloom ciders that I have been able to taste, and we're going to be tasting one during this conversation with the Vodraska Brothers. But on top of that, they also received some sign wood that was brought back from Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. And, anyone in the know in the apple world will think, okay, well, you're talking about wild apple forests. That means that you are probably talking about a whole different type of apple that we have in most sectors of the world, all right? Because it only comes from this one particular area that we see these wild apples. So we're going to be talking about that, talking about where they are now at in being able to grow these apples, where the production is, and are they making cider with it. So you're in for a real treat if you're an apple fan, if you like this topic, and you want to learn about a cool place in Ohio and a family that saved an orchard, once again, which is a beautiful thing, from development, and a family-owned business. It's really an estate, cidery, and winery all in one. So that'll be coming up as our featured presentation. But before that, I'd like to say hello to all the new listeners who are tapping into Cider Chat right now. Always great to have you along for the ride. Do hit subscribe while you are thinking about it right now. Don't miss that, because I don't want you to go off and do something else and say, oh, what was that episode we were thinking about? And to all the regular listeners and all the supporters of Cider Chat for this past season number 8. And soon we'll be rolling into season number 9 with lots of great episodes coming up and so much happening. So we're going to cut to the chase here and roll out next to some news from out and about in Ciderville, and first starting with some of the folks who are helping to sponsor this year episode 392. The American Cider Association presents CiderCon 2024, where cider makers, industry professionals, and enthusiasts from around the globe will gather to network, collaborate, and talk all things cider. From the novice to the aficionado, CiderCon promises an unforgettable experience for everyone. CiderCon will take place this year in Portland, Oregon, and kick off with cider tours on January 15th and the 16th. These tours will sell out, and some already are filled to capacity, so make sure to sign up now.
Register at ciderassociation.org.
On January 17th, the workshops begin with the Alcohol and Tobacco and Trade Bureau Boot Camp, better known as the TTB Boot Camp. And there's also the new Cider Makers Workshop with Sina and the Certified Palmier exam. Later that same day is the Cider Share and Welcome Reception. This is where makers are on hand pouring their ciders, and not only from the U.S., but cider regions worldwide, like Japan.
Do you think there will be ciders from the UK?
Maybe, Perry. I don't know about the Cider Share, but I do know that there will be a tasting seminar on Perry with UK makers.
Yes.
Suffice to say, there will be something for everyone.
Even talking palms?
That's right, Medlars, even talking palms. Thursday and Friday is packed with workshops, tasting seminars, and the trade show, which has a wide range of vendors who serve the cider industry. Tickets are limited to CiderCon, so secure your spot now and be part of the ever-growing cider trade. Visit
theciderassociation.org
for more details and to reserve your tickets now. That's ciderassociation.org. For those listeners out there who don't realize who was chiming in with me, those are my good friends known as the Talking Palms. We have Perry Pear.
Yes, hello. Yes, I am Perry Pear.
And we have the Medlars.
Hello.
And behind the scenes, and not always so forthcoming, but you're kind of working on that, aren't you?
I'd rather not talk about it.
The ever-elusive Mr. Quince.
Hello.
Together they are known as the Talking Palms, and they chime in every once in a while, probably a little less than you would like, on the podcast. Anyways, we might be changing that coming up, because now that you're not so busy out in the orchard, the harvest in this area is kind of done, you have a little bit more time. You guys aren't snoozing in the cider house.
Snoozing, Rhea? How?
Perry Pear, don't worry about it. I'm only jesting with you a little bit.
Indeed.
Anywho, we got more to talk about, including some updates about the French Cider Tour. So let me roll to that next, and then we'll be heading to our featured conversation all about bent ladder, cider, and wine. Does that sound good?
Roger that.
Walking through the orchards.
The French Cider Tour is rolling out to Normandy and Brittany September 22nd through the 28th of 2024. Reservations will be going live. We are earmarking that for the second week of January. And I want to share with you some of the stops that we're going to be doing, because I'm super stoked that we finally were able to get confirmation for this one day that I really had my sights set on. We have a free morning in Saint-Malo, which is a beautiful, beautiful seaside town, city really. And it is, of course, on the water, and just has this incredible stonework, and it's cool to walk the streets. And I wanted to give people a little bit of downtime, because I do not want to lead a cider tour that I wouldn't want to take. And that means I want a little bit of rest and relaxation, some chill time, a little bit of alone time to get myself sorted, and then also ample time to take in the surroundings the way I would if I was in my own car. And so as such, I really work into kind of picnicking along the way for lunch each day so we could enjoy the sights. So I've added another castle, or in this case they call it a chateau, but really it looks like a castle to me. And that's the Chateau du Guildo. And we'll also be heading out to a little fromagerie and having a cheese tasting. Maybe we'll bring that cheese along with us to the chateau. And we'll be doing a new stop with someone that we haven't had on the French Cider Tour. And that is Jérôme Lefebvre at his domain. They also actually make beer there too. So that's going to be a cool tour, and just keeping us on the shore side of Brittany. There's so many makers. I'd love to go into Brittany proper and also in Normandy. I feel like each year I get to add somebody new, a couple people new. And actually, these are two new makers. So we have Jean Lefebvre, and we also have Ciderie de Volcan, Jacques Peritas. And that's going to be in Donfronte, because Jacques has moved his workings out of Sweden into Normandy proper. And that's super exciting because he does some very, very innovative ciders. Along with some of the regulars that I always love to have on the trip, we'll be seeing Etienne Dupont at Domaine Dupont, Antoine Marot from Domaine Marot. I could see out there in the U.S. at least, a lot of folks are catching on to Antoine, what he's been doing, and some of the cider boutique stores in the U.S. are now selling his product. Super cool to see that. And of course, Aguette Laitier at Manoir d'April will be having our traditional Norma buffet. I will keep on talking up the cider tour. I know even if you're not going on the cider tour, you might want to jot down some of these places and say, hey, if they want to go on the cider tour, it might be a cool place for me to go, even if I'm going solo. Although I really recommend coming along for one of these cider tours. If this next year doesn't work for you, you know that I'll be doing it again for sure. And there's just nothing like sitting back, enjoying everything, having your plans made, not worrying about dinner at night, and just taking in cider, food pairing, the sights and sounds, and best of all, the people of France. Once again, if you want to get more info or you want to get really on the waiting list to be first notified if there are reservations open for you, send an email to info@ciderchat.com.
Smelling all the blossoms.
And now let's all grab a glass and join this chat with Matt and Chris Vodraska of Bent Ladder Cider and Wine in Doylestown, Ohio. We begin by hearing from Matt Vodraska all about the region where Bent Ladder Cider and Wine is located.
Doylestown is just a small little city in northeastern Wayne County, about 20 minutes west of Akron and about 40 minutes south of downtown Cleveland. We're close to a whole bunch of people, but when you're here on the orchard, you just look out over green valleys. Everything south of us is rolling farmland. Wayne County is one of the largest agriculturally producing counties in Ohio. So we really can tap into that farmland heritage.
Let's start with your family proper. I mean, you two are brothers. Did you kind of always grow up thinking, I want to become a farmer, I want to live this life? They're both laughing right now. And make cider? Or, what was that journey? What did that look like for you?
I don't think either of us was thinking that when we were kids.
Or as young adults.
Well, what happened there? What and do you do other work? Or are you both working full time now at Bent Ladder?
Oh, we are 100% farm based. We took over Rittman Orchards, which is where Bent Ladder is located, in 2004. It was my dad's quote unquote retirement farm. It's a 125 acre diversified fruit operation that's been in production since the early 1920s. So how that really classified as a retirement project?
This is a 125 acre farm.
In his mind,
Yeah.
it's small.
Kind of a lot of things I think came together. Mom and Dad had kind of retired down to Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. His little garden wasn't cutting it. And I came back up here to go to school at Case, and I was not really liking what I was doing. I was in engineering. He and Mom were kind of like, we're thinking about buying this farm. Do you want to help us out a little bit? And I was like, well, yeah, I don't really like what I'm doing. So sure, I'll do that until I figure out what else I want to do with it. And that's how I got roped in.
And kind of like we said, 125 acre fruit farm is not a small endeavor. So I was in undergrad at the time at the University of Tennessee, and they just kept planting trees, more and more and more trees, and more work. So I transferred actually to Kent State, which is located just about an hour east of us, to help out more on the weekends. And so more trees got planted. And after I wrapped up undergrad, I just came back to the farm to help. And I've been here ever since.
Nice. Nice.
Actually, the first time we saw it was mid-90s. and the previous owners had really wanted to sell it for development housing. So it had been on and off the market over a lot of years. But I guess my dad's persistence finally wore him down. And we were able to take it over just a little later than originally planned.
Is this flat land? Matt, you're kind of smiling about that. Is it flat land or rolling hills or?
The only flat spot of our entire farm is the parking lot.
Oh, no.
We own just one large south-facing slope that overlooks like a wonderful valley.
And these are standard size trees? A mix?
We're mostly on dwarf or semi-dwarf.
Okay.
It's not such a steep slope that we need traditional terracing like some of the places in Germany or.
Chris, are you primarily the orchard person or orchard and vineyard too?
Yeah, orchard and vineyard.
Okay, good.
All the outside stuff.
That works. That works. We like that. And so, Matt, how about yourself?
Coming back into it, Chris and my dad were working really hard to refurbish, replant, rehab everything here on the farm. So my main job was to develop off-site sales, work up the marketing, start researching and establishing a value-added product. Smuckers, big Smuckers, jams and jellies.
Jam, yeah.
Is honestly just 20 minutes down the road from us. So jams and jellies were out. And wine is a heck of a lot more fun than anything else I could think of.
More so than jam.
Exactly. And in the ensuing 10 or 12 years between actually planting the vineyards and starting the building process is when the craft cider movement exploded. And we were sitting on, 5 or 6 acres of vines and 30 or 40 acres of apples. No one else is doing cider.
Yeah.
We like cider. We know apples. This is something we need to do. When we started production, it was concurrent, both estate wine and estate cider.
Say no one else was doing cider. He means in Ohio.
I'm sure the climate change and has really pushed that forward on the agenda, maybe, or on the sights of folks who wouldn't think otherwise.
And one of the things I'm trying to figure out is options for sunburn on apples. I'm getting a lot of sunburn.
Oh dear.
Some of our varieties. And that didn't used to happen. It's not something, I know there's compounds and stuff that bigger orchards use, but it's not something that anybody in Ohio's ever had to do. So rep doesn't even really know where to point me at this point.
I'm thinking about maybe Sorbus domestica, put some of those big old trees in there, let them pop up. And that's what they're looking at out in France, doing some experiments because they have, different leaf structure for shading out in vineyards. Wouldn't that be cool as an alternative? I'm just throwing that out there. A little side note. I know you listen to Cider Chat, so you know that I'm a big fan of Sorbus domestica and its use in other ways than just for the fruit. You had a bunch of, you're saying 30 to 40 acres of apple trees. Those weren't cider apples. You have since planted cider apples.
One of the cool things about taking over a property that's almost 100 years old and totally neglected is we knew we had great soil. So we started from scratch. The first 6 or 8 months after purchasing the property was ripping literally everything out and starting again. By the time we started planting bent ladder, we had 80 or 90 different varieties of apples in the ground. A lot of heirloom varieties that were originally planted just because we thought they were cool.
Nice.
Neat. They looked cool. They had unique flavors, but then reevaluating them, pretty much all the heirloom apples for hard cider or storability or something not geared towards fresh market. Bent Ladder is just the younger sibling of Rittman Orchards, kind of like I'm the little brother of Chris here. Rittman Orchards was and is the, where we're located.
Right.
Bent Ladder is just kind of the cider and wine operation.
Do you prefer to be referred to as one or the other?
Well, for cider purposes, it should definitely be Bent Ladder. But on the orchard side, the way the business started, we grow berries, we grow peaches, cherries, pears, nectarines.
When we say we're a diversified food farm, we are diversified. Oh yeah, Rittman Orchards by itself is a destination. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. A great farm market store with bakery here on the property. Great U-pick business that starts in June with strawberries, goes into July with red and black raspberries and blueberries. And the website rittmanorchards.com is a fantastic resource for that. Chris spent a ton of time and effort creating a really fantastic apple chart, all of the varieties that we're currently, marketing.
I need to update it a little bit. We've taken out a couple stinkers and we've got a bunch of stuff in production
it's a fantastic resource for any app. We had an interesting problem starting out. So Ohio, like we said, no one was doing hard cider, which meant no one was exposed to real hard cider. Yeah. Everybody, Woodchuck and Angry Orchard was about all that people were familiar with. It was hard at first to convince people that hard cider doesn't need to be, 8% residual sugar.
Yeah.
So we started off with, our heirloom cider, which had all the good stuff in it. And then we made a base cider with a lot of the culinary apples, Portland, Jonathan, Ida Red, Macintosh, that gave it that very apple forward profile that we could then add other fruits and juices to make things that were more familiar to consumers, hopefully more elevated in terms of execution, the things that people could find approachable. It wasn't until just the past couple years that I think our customer base has gotten more comfortable with the idea of what real cider should taste like, that we were able to launch the Heritage Series and really say, hey, this is what good cider should be. Entirely different than the first year where I was, twisting arms and browbeating people into even trying our dry heirloom. It's pretty cool seeing that evolution here.
Yeah. Classic, very classic kind of trajectory that a lot of folks have experienced in that way. And that's good to hear that you're on the flip side of that. So moving forward, and you're sitting in your tasting room right now, behind you, I could see that there's the bar and bottles up and lighting. It looks just beautiful. I mean, going to the website, it's a beautiful property, no doubt, and tasting room facility for visitors.
We have kind of 3 lines of hard cider now. What we have on draft, people approach kind of like beer, lower in alcohol, usually between 6 and 7%. It's more of the popular consumer style, very fruit forward, mixed with other fruits at the end. I mean, we do some wild stuff, like we do an elderberry cider with gin botanicals. We do a root beer cider where I actually go out and find the different spices and roots and the old recipes of root beer and translate that into cider.
So does that mean like sassafras? You're going in?
Is that wintergreen, stuff like that?
Yeah.
Cool. And those are seasonal. They rotate a lot. That's where we can kind of play. And then we have the Heritage Series, which is like our serious cider, drier, higher in alcohol, where we really showcase the fruit and the growing conditions in our terroir.
Is that all coming out, the Heritage Series, in the 750 milliliter bottles?
Yes. Yeah. So those are all large format bottles. And then just this year, we launched our co-ferment line. So Chris kind of alluded to it. He's an engineer and chemist, and I just like finding out how things work. So I thought it was really interesting that, people make wine from grapes because grapes are so chemically complex. Apples are really neat, but they lack that amount of complexity. So instead of just relying on the apple, we start combining things to ferment together, because fermentation releases and creates so many flavors and aromas that you don't get just sweetening something with juice at the end. So we launched our line of co-ferments just a few months ago, where, again, we want to showcase the fruit and the process. And that's been really positive reception that we've gotten on that. So,
and the grapes that you have, are these hybrids? Can you name some of the grapes that you're using?
We're 100% estate operation. We grow all the grapes, we grow all the apples. Our grapes we're going to be putting in some vinifera next year, but right now our established vineyard is 100% French American hybrids. Our big ones would be Traminette, Vidal Blanc, Noray, Gros Noir, Chardonnay, and then we do some table grapes too.
Yep. Mars, Marquis, and Jupiter table grapes.
So with the co-ferments, which is a really, I wouldn't say it's up and coming. It's been kind of like being forecast on the billboard, I think, for years now. So are you maybe trying to showcase a little bit more tannin structure in a co-ferment, or fruit forward? For what would one expect with your cider and, your apple and grape? I'm assuming, right? Co-ferments.
Grappler, which is our grape apple hybrid. I put some apples and grapes in there with nice firm tannic structure. And then I try to preserve that structure through the fermentation. It does gear a little bit more fruit centric because there's so much other stuff going on.
Let's talk about your soil. I'm imagining you have really good drainage because you're on a hill. But what is your soil made up of?
Pretty fertile. We have to have drainage tile everywhere.
When you're establishing an orchard, never skimp on drainage tile. I mean, every time we thought we did, we're like, crap, there's a wet spot. We better go back and put more in.
Right. These are things that people don't think about. They imagine the beautiful little orchard and it's easy to pick the apples and, but there are so many little things to consider. In the orchard, you're mentioning apples and pears. Can we just talk about like the amount of varieties you have?
We have 96 varieties that we market by name, or that Matt uses specifically by name. Some of them are cider varieties, so they don't go into our farm market. They go straight to Matt. And then we have another like 110-ish varieties down in that test block Matt was talking about. A lot of that is genetic material that Dr. Diane Miller from Ohio State, she brought it back from Kazakh and Kyrgyzstan probably 20 years ago or so.
For people that don't know, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan have apple forests. I mean, those are where scientists figured that apples evolved from before making their way west across the rest of Asia, Europe. And it's really about bringing these ancient apple genetics back into the rotation and crossing them with modern varieties,
which are extremely different than the genetics behind domestic apples.
You guys are really like pulling it out of the hat here. I had no idea. So most folks have what is called Malus domestica, which is like kind of like I'm going to not call it common because the apple would be insulted by that, but it's kind of like the general variety. But it sounds like you have what is considered Malus cerevisiae, right? Is that true?
Probably.
From Kazakhstan. Yeah, that's what it is.
I hate to go on record saying that, but I mean, it's
wow.
Seeds and genetic material brought back straight from Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan.
We just get the long identifying numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no names. So you don't really have names for them. You just have these like numbers that the scientists brought back. My goodness. So you grafted these on to rootstock.
Yes, what we have is grafted onto dwarfing rootstock.
Okay.
There is a bigger planting down at Dawes Arboretum, kind of the seedling tree. They kind of selected out things that they thought would be interesting and grafted them.
Wow, the plot thickens. This is so exciting to hear this. I mean, one wants to go to see the wild apple forest of Kazakhstan, but now you could just go to Doylestown, Ohio, go to Bent Ladder and check out these amazing, they look like your typical apple trees, but you are creating apples that aren't found in many places in the world, because that hasn't really been an area where researchers have been able to go into it to that degree. And the fact that she was able to bring that back is wonderful. Are you seeing anything different in growing that type of apple tree versus what like the Malus domestica would be?
Well, on the dwarfing rootstock, they kind of behave about the same. Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot of experience with the seedling trees, so I can't really speak to that. But I know it's a jungle. They're working on trying to get it cleaned up a little bit somehow down there. On Bud 9, it behaves like a Bud 9 apple.
And what about the actual apples themselves? What properties are you getting out of it that's saying, oh man, these are good cider apples? Or are you seeing them as good cider apples?
Yeah, so some of them are. Matt can speak better to the cider properties. On my end, one of the perks of getting genetics from that far back that they have disease resistances. They just grow wild. It's pretty easy to tell if something.
But it'd be different in that region of the world than in Ohio growing. So like are they resistant to fire blight? Are you seeing what are some of the things that they're resistant to?
Well, scab is the biggest thing. I have not seen any fire blight in them. So
That's good.
For whatever that's worth. I mean,
yeah.
But
Good.
they haven't gotten any yet.
Awesome.
Again, a lot of this is probably better observed in the seedling orchard that's kind of overgrown and not taken care of at the arboretum.
All right.
And my trees that I at least semi take care of so that we can get a nice crop on them every year.
Yeah, that sounds criminal that they're not taking care of that. I don't want to knock the arboretum. I'm sure they're really cool people. And I want to sneak out there come this winter with little, I'll go take care of their trees. Anywho, what were you going to say, Matt, about these apples?
Oh, yeah. So the fruit properties, there's some really gnarly acids going on.
Okay.
The batch, I made just a test batch, creatively named test batch last year. And, some of these Kyrgyz apples are so like acidic, it's like eating through the enamel on your teeth.
Wow.
But they have like a rich depth of flavor that you don't usually get from sharps. So they're sitting in barrels until they settle down.
Is this your first batch of cider that you're making from them, or?
Last year, yeah.
Okay, all right, wonderful.
Have blended in, some pickings from our other batches, but it was just last year where we've had enough volume that I could really move forward. Like we don't do 5 or 10 gallon carboys. Like the smallest batch I'll do with the commercial equipment and making sure I could prove commercial viability is about 300 gallons, which isn't a lot, all things considered. But anything less than that, you start cutting corners or exposing to oxidation or a lot of other just processing challenges that would not adequately represent the fruit in a commercial, like a viable commercial setting. What we're trying to do is get these apples and prove that they can be commercially viable. We want new varieties that are better for growers like us. We're not just about the end product, we're about the fruit too.
Are you blending them in or kind of a standalone cider that you're making with these varieties that you are coming?
I'm starting to do standalone.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, that's, I feel, the best way to test.
Yeah.
Is just go for it. So the first batch I made next year is still aging in oak right now, neutral oak barrels. So we'll
Fantastic.
be able to evaluate flavor quality and all the other aromatic and flavor characteristics when it's time. That's kind of the plan again for this year. They have good sugar. We sweat out our apples before pressing. So we'll probably be approaching those test apples shortly after Christmas to press. The plan is probably to put them up in barrels, but since we have more material this year, we can be a little more selective with what goes in that one test batch than we have been in previous years. So I can probably take out some of the sharper apples so it's not quite as wild, start focusing on making the highest quality we can make.
Yeah, I should point out these trees are 5 years old, I believe, at this point. So that's why we're on a couple years worth of cider. We haven't had that big a quantity yet, but they're coming into full production.
This is really exciting news. I haven't really heard anybody doing that yet in the U.S. proper, really anywhere in the world. I'm sure there are folks that just haven't heard yet, but what an exciting, like special niche offering that you're going to be able to have here. So we'll keep an eye on that and let listeners know as it kind of rolls forward. And it sounds like it was very high acid, so you could expect a very bright cider for sure. And it'll be on you, I suppose, to kind of like balance it out to that preference and see where it rolls. Are you using cultured yeast then, or any wild ferments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. We don't have a huge facility. So even if I say we're wild fermenting something, I mean, I've used cultured yeasts in the wines and in past ciders. That's what's sticking to the walls and ceilings and floors.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, calling it a wild ferment's kind of cheating when I know that the cultured yeasts that have evolved to deal with the pH and the conditions are what really is going to drive the fermentation anyway. These apples to us are too valuable to scratch off a year because something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So we just stick to the highest standards and protocols to make sure we showcase the fruit and make the best cider we can.
Mm-hmm. How about the can you start making up names for them or what?
Some of them I will. I actually have an apple I've named after my daughter. And I have an Abby's apple.
Oh.
I need to come up with one that I like enough to name after my son now.
When he can talk and understand things.
And Abby's really excited. She's in kindergarten now, and she gets to take Abby's apple to her teachers every year. And she's like really bubbly and proud of it. She's like, "This is my apple."
Yeah, and why did that particular apple become Abby's apple?
It's sweet and golden, just like
that. It kind of a. Let's go with that.
Yeah, well, that works.
No, it's a really cool apple. It's got a lot of flavors. It almost tastes like fruit punch when it's ripe. It's got so many flavors going on. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a medium size. It's very pretty. It's got a nice red color to it.
Like a hue, like a reddish hue to it?
Yeah, it's a mostly red apple. Okay. It would be a little beyond a blush, not quite 100% red, but yeah, it just stuck out as like, I need to plant more of these, and I really want to name an apple after my daughter, and this one's very, very good.
I don't know any other Abby apple out there, so that totally makes sense. And it's nice to start with the letter A too. You get it in the order of apples, no doubt.
I've got enough. I think we can go through the alphabet. We try here.
That's cool. Well, Chris, it sounds like you're having a blast growing these like wild varieties that you have here. And what an amount of varieties to manage. How are you marking those out in the orchard? How do you
a lot of it's, I have spreadsheets and maps and things.
Yeah.
It's not as well organized as I wish it was. We kind of over the years have gone, okay, something's coming out here, I'm gonna put something new in there, and then it gets even more complicated.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot to manage, no doubt, to catalog it and all, yeah.
I had to submit my yields to crop insurance this week, and doing that is very time consuming. It's a lot to keep everything mapped and tree counts updated. But like Matt said, we also like collecting the variety. It's just cool. Like that's one of the aspects that I love about it. It's so interesting.
I was kind of curious, all these varieties you're mentioning and that collecting, like, where are you discovering these apples? Is it because of the organization that you're part of, or is it through your own research that you're saying? Because, what I keep on hearing, and most recently talking to Dan Bussey about this, the author of that big book, the Illustrated Guide to Apples in U.S. and Canada, is that a lot of people do kind of focus on the varieties that everybody else is growing. You see out on the different groups, like, what should I plant for cider apples? And everybody is kind of planting, you got to put in Dabinette, right? You got to do that. And it sounds like here you're able to step off the line and try something that nobody else has been trying. So I'm just kind of wondering, how are you finding out about that?
Oh, well, we have Dabinette too.
No, Dabinette's a great one. I love a Dabinette. I love it. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, we have a lot of the traditional stuff.
A lot of reading.
Yeah, we kind of planted a specific cider orchard with the intention of these are the varieties we're supposed to have to make good cider, and these are of the varieties that are a royal pain in my butt every year. I mean, the crossing thing that's kind of becoming a little side hobby of it.
What do you mean crossing thing?
Making crosses of the cider apples. Gold Rush is one of my favorites, my favorite apple to begin with. So the Midwest apple stuff, Dr. Diane Miller, who I mentioned, Diane came to me with a proposal, see if we would be interested in planting these because she thought that they'd have cider properties that we'd be interested in later. Wanted somebody who'd be able to use them rather than just for research purposes. She gets to do her research and then we get to use the rest of them.
Yeah, so we don't want to make the same mistakes that have been made in the past, where you're selecting out for just 2 or 3 characteristics, like whether it's pretty, whether it's shelf stable, and whether it's sweet, right?
Right.
Her thought, was, well, apples are used for a whole lot more than that. So let's find 2 guys that are going to do with a lot more than that.
Yeah. She gets to drink it too, hopefully. Because you get to eat it. That's like one experience, and then you get to drink it. It's a whole other experience.
And I mean, I also stay up to date with new stuff coming out, and I need to get more Gravenstein because I need to play around with some Gravenstein. I've got a few, but not enough for Matt to do anything with, really.
Because my first question is always, do you have at least 3 or 4 bins of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I've got a bin or a bin and a half. He's like, well, then I have to blend it. I'm like, shoot, now I need more trees.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, he's an enabler.
I'm getting a little thirsty. I don't know about you guys, but we've been talking for a little while, and we're talking about cider, and I'm super excited to hear this other piece that I didn't realize, that you have this amazing assortment of apples. But I also have this bottle in front of me here. There it is, the russet. So how about if we crack these open and you could tell me and all the listeners what to expect in the glass?
Yeah, so we were super happy. Actually, this bottle of russet just took home a gold medal for Best Heritage Cider at the U.S. Open Cider Championship. It's a blend of mostly golden russet. It's a little over 80% golden russet, with the remainder being Roxbury. I'm sure you and a lot of your listeners know those are 2 of the oldest true American apples out there.
The bouquet is incredible. It's just popping out of the glass. I haven't sipped it yet, and I'm just going to describe the color here. Just a very light golden straw, super clarity, little. It didn't pop, when it's a crown and cap on a 750 ml bottle, and the bottle itself is, a nice big old apple there. It says Bent Ladder on the top, and then russet on the bottom, Wayne County, and it's 8.1% alcohol by volume. And opening this just, this is where I like to drink through my nose first, just like take it in, that really, those essence of like almost like honey and melon of a russet. You're getting it right in the aroma.
It really has a nice, rich, complex flavor.
That's so not good. I'm sorry, I'm stopping the perk. I want to say cheers. Cheers. This is good. Dang. Wow. So smooth. And so you get a little bit of that sweetness, but it's a dry cider, but that the fruit is just in your nose, it's in your mouth, makes me, salivate a little bit of the astringency, but it's so smooth. It didn't go through malolactic fermentation,
no.
But it didn't like knock that down either. So that wouldn't give me an idea MLF, but it's so soft and like, it's caressing those 2 apples. Beautiful job.
A really great bottle for people that want to get more into the like traditional styles of cider. Has that like nice balanced sweetness, the really great long honey finish to it. It's just very approachable while still being an elevated cider.
to me is like the epitome of cider making, when you're able to do both, not only pleasant in the mouth, but the actual bouquet is following through, and it follows through. What you smell is what you taste, and that makes sense. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes it takes you on a different journey in the mouth. But here, rock solid all the way through. Mm-hmm.
I joke my job is just not screwing up his job in the cellar, because you can't make great cider without grapefruit. I get super excited in the fall seeing all this, amazing fruit coming in, rubbing my hands together, thinking what I can do with it.
The Heritage series, is it typically always 3 bottles or 3 different types of ciders that
We
you're making?
actually have 6 now.
Okay. Well, let's name those. Let's hear what they are.
Heirloom, which is our driest. That's kind of an English style cider. Heavier tannins, a little more austere. Armstead is kind of our European country style. A little bit of funk to it, really well balanced, a little bit of hay. Then the Rosé Gold, which is mostly Redfield, picks up the natural pink hue. And we aged it in freshly dumped red wine barrels. So it takes on a little bit more of a Venus quality. Then we have our Black Gold, which is a single varietal Gold Rush cider. We both just love Gold Rush apples.
Yeah.
All the way around. Makes a great cider, makes a great eating apple. It's disease resistant. It's just such a bomb-proof cider. It's fantastic. And then the Russet, Roxbury Golden Blend. And just this past year, we were the first commercial cidery to produce a 100% varietal Evercrisp hard cider.
Wow.
Which is a big new release in the Great Lakes region, as
it's getting planted all over the world.
Yeah, it's kind of like Honeycrisp.
It's a better Honeycrisp.
Yeah. And how did you like working with that? Was it pretty easy to make a cider out of that particular variety? Or?
It's good. So, that was my first run at it. Doing it again this year. So it met with a really positive reception. I was pretty happy with it. It's challenging using fruit that no one else has used before, because you're not 100% sure on the juice chemistry or what flavor and aroma precursors are lurking in there that you can accentuate through the fermentations and yeast selection. So it was a really pleasant surprise to see what we got. It's a really pleasant cider. It's light. It's really crisp, fresh tasting. It's just a very quenchable cider.
Well, you're kind of being pioneers for other cider makers to try their hand with Evercrisp. It's not my first thought of go-to to make a cider out of, but here you're doing it, and it's probably really a perfect apple for that. What's the experience like coming to the tasting room? Are you open year-round? Can folks come there in the new year?
Year-round, Thursday through Sunday, noon to 9, pretty much. Really laid back. They can get a flight to try different ciders or wines. Everything's available on a flight board. And then, they can either sit down and relax with a glass or a bottle, howlers and growlers of the craft ciders to take home with them. We do a lot of live music, support the singer-songwriter community in our area. So we hold close to 100 concerts a year here, which is especially great in the summer. We have a huge lawn area. People bring out lawn chairs, just chill out with a food truck and our ciders, and it's a great experience for everybody. If you aren't fortunate enough to live in Northeast Ohio, you can also order the large format bottles like the Heritage series or the co-ferments online for shipping.
So you have this beautiful series of ciders that you make. You have this outstanding orchard and select apples. You have one red flesh apple that you mentioned. Are there other red flesh varieties out of that bunch?
There's a number of them. Some of the Kyrgyz and Kazakh stuff.
Yeah, there's some
really wild.
I was
colors.
wondering about that.
I have a test apple that's, I think its genetics originally came from the Kyrgyz or maybe the Kazakh stuff. but it got incorporated into some of the Midwest apple, but it's just got a serial number to it. But it's a lot earlier. It's probably a month at least earlier than Redfield.
Oh, wow.
And so we have the capability as those trees, we had a few on them this year, but as those get into production, we have the capability of doing some earlier red flesh stuff too, getting some nice pink ciders.
Yeah, those are true rosés in my mind, where you don't have to add hibiscus or anything there. It's actual what the apple lends into the bottle. That's really cool. So moving forward, here you are, 2023. You've been at this for a while. You're getting your practices down. You're making delicious product. Obviously, you're winning awards, and you've won me over, no doubt. What is like the 5-year plan for Bent Ladder? Where you taking from here? It's just kind of like catching your stride and continuing with these varieties that you're growing and honing in there? Or is there something that over these past couple of years that has informed you in saying, this is our wheelhouse and this isn't our wheelhouse?
And my 5-year plan would be a day off once in a while.
I know that feeling.
I think especially with these experimental apples, we have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of work to be done yet. I think we're both really excited for that.
A lot of crosses to still make and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's like cool, right? Because we also grow a bunch of English and French apples.
Mm-hmm.
So, the big problem with those is disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really hoping that we can start crossing some of these disease resistance traits into traditional cider apples to make them more possible.
Yeah. I currently have a chunk of those seedling trees, but I'm hoping to cross it a lot more as we go.
And that's just a very long, extensive process to develop. So that will probably take us most of our careers before we see any, those kind of things come to fruition. But, that's what you do when you grow up,
Yeah.
It's the long view.
Yeah, this is wicked, wicked cool. I mean, what you have here, the opportunity and what you're going to be able to provide for Apple fans, far and wide, to be able to watch what you're doing at Bent Ladder. I am positive that people listening right now are like, holy smokes, put this on your map. And I, for one, want to get out there because I want to walk on that hillside and check out your drainage and check out these apples and sit in that tasting room and keep on drinking some of this russet because it's absolutely delicious.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time with me today. You got to see the beautiful sunset while we were talking. I appreciate your support for Cider Chat. I know you've been long-term patrons of this podcast, and just sharing your story. It's encouraging for people to see two brothers working together and doing that well, and also kind of doing a family legacy in many ways. That gives a lot of hope, and to in turn just be making beautiful product for all of us. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I've been a listener for a very long time. I turned Matt on to this, actually. I was like, you've got to start listening to this because
we're just happy that we can support someone spreading the good word.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it. And it's people like you that I get to meet that really inspire me to keep on rolling forward and doing this work.
Thank you so much again for having us.
Thank you.
Certainly appreciate it.
Well, I suspect like me, you're kind of like, what? They have that cyanwood, Malus cerevisiae? Oh my gosh. That is like mind-bending. Anyways, I will be following up on that and definitely letting everybody out there in Ciderville know, as I know, what the heck is going on there. That's incredible. I'm so excited to hear that they were able to get enough apples together to make some cider. So cool stuff happening at Bent Ladder Cider and Wine in Doylestown, Ohio. Check out the show notes for some contact info and more at ciderchat.com, episode 392. And if you got value from this here episode and if you listened this far, please do consider becoming a patron of Cider Chat, like the folks at Bent Ladder. They joined the Cider Going Up campaign at the Cider Chat Patreon page. You can too. That's spelled Patreon. Just Google that, Cider Chat and Patreon. And I also have another tidbit from a patron of Cider Chat by the name of Robert Tennell. He produced a movie that you could watch on Netflix now. So if you subscribe to Netflix, this is an easy movie for you to watch. It's totally seasonal because it's called Feast of the Fishes. And it takes place in Pennsylvania. And it kind of covers a family's happening all around the night before Christmas, which is a big food gathering. And I think if you're into cider, you're into food. And so for that alone, I really, really appreciated it. And of course, it's somebody that we know and who loves apples. So check it out. Feast of the Fishes on Netflix. And kudos to Robert Tennell. And while we were talking about holiday happenings, I would just like to put a big plug in for the arrival of winter coming on December 21st. I know a lot of folks who haven't seen snow are kind of hoping for snow because, well, you know, as they say, it is a farmer's fertilizer, and those little subnuvian animals like the moles and the voles that go around in the undercarriage of the snow, they really need that in many ways to survive. But for me, it's not about the snow in the same way anymore. It's really about the light returning. December 21st is the shortest day of the year. It's not something that science made up. It just is. And after that day, it's going to get longer and longer with the daylight. And that just feels so good. That just makes me like go charging into the new year with a great amount of energy and hope. And I hope that spreads to you too. And it's also a reminder that no matter where you are, and no matter how you're feeling, the light always returns. Best wishes to you and yours. And with that, I leave you here. This is Ria Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We like cider. We like palms. We love orchards and having fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider, we like palms, we like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason, there is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes, there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Oh yes, we do. We like palms. Oh yes, we do. We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we do it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Ba-da-da-dum. Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider. Ba-da-da-dum. We like palms. Oh yes, we do. We like orchards, having some fun. Yeehaw!